So we're more than 10 years into an upcycle, the last financial crisis in '08. Since then, we haven't had any big recession anywhere. How do you see the mobility industry reacting to a possible recession coming in?
That's a great question. First of all, let me tell you that I'm expecting that recession, and it won't be a very light one. I think it will be actually quite a hard one, because it's kind of a long-term debt cycle that's coming to an end. It's not just the 10 years of growth, is much more than that. I think we can bring that back almost to dot-com boom or even before, in terms of the long run debt cycle. That's probably coming to an end. Mobility will be impacted, I think, in two ways. Obviously, if there's less capital and less credit available to people, cars tend to be sold less, and we saw that in 2008, in 2010. That's when car sales went down. That's when the first true car sharing services or true functional car sharing services came to be. Car2Go was launched in 2008. Was actually piloted in 2008, launched in 2010. Drive Now from BMW was launched in 2011. So 2010-2011. So recessions are good for shared mobility, because there's less capital available. You need to be more clever how you deploy your own capital. Now the bad thing is that these services also demand a lot of capital. So we're kind of transferring that capital need from individuals to companies. This is already happening. If you look at the sales numbers from the auto industry, a lot of the cars being sold today are actually sold to companies, either because they're a fringe benefit to the employee, or because everybody's buying cars through fleet management companies. So a majority of cars right now is actually sold to companies, to fleet managers, and that will continue and probably increase as private individuals have less access to capital, and these fleet managers have better access to capital because they're banks. So we'll see more of this transition away from the private into the corporate. And once the car is not yours anymore, you're much more susceptible to use new modes of transport. So if I'm offering you a car and I offer you the possibility, and the car is not yours, so you're leasing it from me, but I offer you the possibility of sharing that car when you're not using it, you don't really care. You don't feel that personal connection that people still do feel with their cars. The car becomes just a way to get from point A to point B. If I offer you a discount on your monthly payment by sharing your car whenever you're not using it, you might be open to that. So we're tapping in the case of the shared mobility industry, we'll be tapping into a much larger pool of assets in a much easier way. Going longer term, if the recession is long, it might hinder the capability to develop this technology, the autonomous driving technology. We're still not there yet. We're still going to need a lot of capital to make that happen. And if that capital dries up, for some reason, it might delay the cycle that we're now entering, which is a test cycle. So we're not so much in the deep tech point at the moment. We're in the testing moment. So a lot of kilometers driven in different environments, etc., and that costs a lot of money. So it's not just having a team of very bright people coding the technology for you. Nowadays we're testing it, and that takes time and costs money. So if there's less money available for that, then the uptake cycle or the maturation cycle of the technology might take longer. And that will impact, obviously, this transformational change. From my perspective, and if we look at these long-term debt cycles, whenever the recession comes, big changes happen. We had the New Deal in the US after the Black Friday crash. We have all these policies since 2008.
Regulation comes in.
Regulation, quantitative easing in this case, and there is a big change on how people organize themselves in a society. So perhaps mobility will also be one of these changes, in the way that we need to be more conscious about the way we use the resources. It's not just the kilometers that you drive or how environmentally friendly your vehicle is. It's also about the sheer number of vehicles. There's just too much metal and too much resources bundled up into a format which is used only 2% of the time. So it makes sense to liberate some of these resources back into the industry, while at the same time improving people's mobility and people's quality of life. Because if you look around any city in the world, and even the most modern cities in Europe, in the US, you see and you actually look and see the amount of space taken up by cars in transportation, it's immense. So if we can reclaim some of that space back, because there's less need to park cars, because cars will be moving around, etc., for some reason, then we can also improve the quality of life, and by doing that, improve the value of the property, which then tends to bring the market up as well. So I see recession on one hand as potentially problematic, as they always are, but also as an opportunity to do some real deep reforms of the way we do things.